Good evening, everyone. It's nice to stand in a very restricted area with less mobility to talk about mobility beyond boundaries to empower generations of the world. Actually, I'm standing here as a practical witness of the rural population who still believe in education and employment as the priority for our own empowerment. And I strongly believe as a communication engineer, high-performance communication technology can fulfill the desire and dream of the rural people. Right, everyone is excited about the advent of 5G, especially people back in my own country, India. For the past 2 days, the Indian Communication Congress is happening. And every 5 minutes, I get a WhatsApp message boasting on the mightiness of the technology to upload 4K videos, to download 4K videos within seconds, megabits of information, augmented reality beyond catching Pokemon characters, and lot many. They are loading it every 5 seconds. So I strongly believe the next generation communication technology is beyond our dreams, can perform anything. I always say this, communication technologies can connect everything, everybody from everywhere around the globe. In fact, beyond the globe as well. And to go back to my stories a little bit, I start from 8,000 BC. Look at the population raise in the 19th century, in fact, 20th century. Almost, it has grown up from 1 billion to 7 billion. And we are 7.7 billion generation today. And when you look at the number of connected devices, it already exceeded the population. And it is expected that there will be 50 billion connected devices in 2020, where the population will still be 8 billion, which means that we will be we have a clumsy devices, connected devices across us. And I'm always worried how we are going to carry all those charges of different standards. Okay, because only the devices are wireless, the charges are still wired. Okay. Right, talking about advent of this technology, the powerfulness of this technology, we are more excited whenever there is an increase or whenever there is a new rollout of Apple and Samsung. What is the excitation is all about? Is it all about downloading videos, uploading videos, playing games online? Is that the capability of the technology? Or the technology can perform something beyond those things? Right. I'm going to talk something on a different scenario and the capabilities of the technology which is beyond our imaginations, and probably I'll be expressing my desires what the technology can do to the generations to come. Okay, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this word, urbanization, urban growth, urban development. I'm not much familiar with these words. All I know is I'm from a remote village, and I don't know the discrimination between my town and my village and my city, and there is always a dispute between friends. And so I choose to have a colored picture. I call it as colored map theory. Something matches with the graph theory. Okay, we are very good in understanding colors, right? The more the red, the more the urban it is. The countries are more the urban. You can see that almost 55% of the world population today is living in urban land. And it is expected to be 68% in 2050. And more of the urban population, growth in the urban population is going to happen in South Asia, especially in India, China, and Nigeria, and as well as in the sub-Sahara African region. Okay, what's the benefit of being more urban? Or what is the benefit of urbanization? Obviously, I don't understand what is Human Development Index, Inequality Adjusted Human Development Index, and Human Capital Index, and I'm least bothered of it. All I know is more the urban, greater these indexes are, because it is more green, more blue, and more green, which is our positive colors, less red. Right? So we all understand that more the urban, more prosperous, more happier life, right? Yeah, more the percentage of employment in the tertiary sectors, and more the happiness, and more the lifespan. So being urban is all about having more and more and more of every goodness in the world. Okay, let us look at other side. If we believe that urbanization is going to pollute the world, if you look at it, the maximum index of air pollution is in the land which is of rural population. The maximum poverty is there in the land which are of rural population. The minimum literacy is there in the land of rural population. The minimum tertiary education is there in the land of rural population, but still the land of rural population believes, have hopes on education, and only on education as the means to improve their standard of living. Right. Having talked about everything about rural and urban area, I can just crisply say that being rural is living a sorrowful life. Being urban is living a blessed life. Okay. When we look at these rural areas where the population density is going to grow, we can see the distribution of the population density is even in India. I'm taking India as my reference because India is the highly populated rural area compared to any other area where the transition is going to happen, right? And if you look at it, the literacy rate has a direct impact on the poverty. The higher the literacy, the lower the poverty. You can always map it. And you cannot expect people in India to move to a place of higher literacy and lower poverty because India is a place of diversified culture. Always people have a reluctance to move from one state to other state because the language is different, the culture is different, the food is different, everything is different across the states in India. So urbanization means, in India means it is the development of the lands, the rural lands, what I call it as rural resurrection. Okay. What technology can do is, especially the 5G communication, which is enabled to provide a massive communication by the backbone networks of fiber and satellites. 4,000 plus satellites are looking at the Earth, and millions of kilometers of fibers are running around the Earth, under seas, under the Earth, everywhere, right? So I just talk about the 3 key parameters, which is the requirement of the rural population, or what they call it as push factor, which pushes the population from the rural area into the urban area. In India, when a person from a rural area moves to an urban area, it doesn't end up in a very beautiful life. That's very evident when you see the biggest slum of Asia is in Maharashtra, India, where the urban population is very high. Okay. The technology can be a savior, if you ask me. All the aims I put is about mobile communication, mobile education, mobile jobs, mobile finance, mobile safety, mobile standard of living, mobile social networking and entertainment. So, because everyone holds a mobile. Irrespective of the poverty in rural areas in India, 60% of the rural generation hold a mobile phone, which means that if education could be reached them through mobile phones, then there can be a possibility of empowering the rural generation. If the health standards or health care can reach them through mobile phones, there is a possibility of good standard of living. If employment can reach them through mobile phones or through connected devices, then there is a possibility of happiness in their life that matches with the urban culture. I don't need to talk about entertainment and cultural opportunities, because if you look at the more YouTube users and data users in the world, I think India ranks first. I just have a small scenario. We have a very high developed education institutions across the world. In fact, I started learning a lot of my lessons which I teach now from those education institutions, online videos and tutorials and lectures. Well-developed educational institution, something like APU. you have a very high infrastructure which cannot be built in the rural areas. But still, the same education system can be virtually taken to the rural areas where there is a potential student. If you look at the world population, especially the population of the poor, 50%, more than 50% of the poor populations are children, underprivileged, who cannot afford for education. And if there is no education, there is no possibility of a good employment. And if there is no good employment, there is no possibility of a good standard of living. So if education can be taken through these connected devices, and if education institutions are matured enough to come out with a curriculum, authenticated curriculum system, and authenticated assessment systems, which is already possible in the Western countries, or already happening in the Western countries, and a very authenticated certification for the skill development in the rural areas. And if the government and the private sectors have a strong faith on the educational system, certification systems, then obviously getting the rural population empowered with education and employability may not be a difficult task. And it needs a lot of maturity in the generations, in the urban generations. Because I see a lot of online courses happening, but when it comes to employment, on the first place, they ask whether your employment, whether your degree is online or whether your degree is face-to-face. Now, we believe in online communication. We believe in online businessing, online banking. But when it comes to education, we don't still have reluctance in believing online education system. This reluctance is because of some flaws that were existing before. But that can be easily mitigated, or it can be easily sorted out using an high standard communication systems, right? And coming to employment, especially service sector jobs, where it doesn't require the physical presence of an employee, can be shifted to the rural areas. For example, I don't need a clerk in my office to do my letters which I dictate. Rather, I can get them connected from anywhere around the globe, right? If the president of USA want a letter from India, some rural employee of India, still he can get it done from the rural employee of India. It's all about, the technology is matured enough to provide the possibility of employability transfer to rural areas. And coming to healthcare, which is the most lacking sector there, because doctors are reluctant to go into rural areas. But I'm not finding fault with them. Obviously, they have their own life to live. They have their own children to take care of, and they have to grow up. They have their own commitments. But if doctors can connect to the rural health workers and can have the test parameters or all the test results, and if there can be an established medical discussions about the patients, the healthcare of the rural areas can be improved. And all these are few sectors where a rural resurrection can happen with technologies. And I don't need to talk about safety, right? When a person moves from an urban area to the rural area to an urban area, he leaves his family there, which is socially vulnerable group, women and children. And obviously, with communication technologies, with technologies of more connectivity, now this social safety can be, cannot be challenged, or it can be more profound, right? Sorry. Having told all this, either human or technology can serve without leading, but cannot be a leader without serving. Obviously, telecommunication technology claimed to be the leader of all technology, providing a revolution in every sector or every economical sectors, will be a leader when it starts serving the generations. Thank you so much.